Yo, what's up everyone? This is Valoramous. In today's DJ tutorial, I'm going to show you how to set and arrange your DJ hot cues for every track. What you want to do is have a formula for every track, that way you know which color belongs to which section of which track instantly. And so as soon as you see these colors, you will immediately know where you're at in the song, when you can expect to transition, and how you can expect the transition. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring the camera around to my DJ decks, and I'm going to show you the hot cue pads with the various colors, and then we're going to apply these pads to one of my tracks. That way you know how to actually do this yourself. But you need to create a system for yourself. That way for every track it's the same system every time. And my system is as follows. I have the first cue point, which is a red cue point. That is going to be the first beat. It's basically your initial cue point where you plan to mix in that track. The second cue point is in blue. That is going to be when the track drops, basically when that track is playing exclusively and the outbound song is eliminated. And so that is going to be the first beat of the first verse, or basically the first break, and you want that song to be playing exclusively. The third, fourth, and potentially fifth cue points are going to be in different colors depending on the structure of the actual chorus or drop. So these colors are going to be green or purple. If they're green and purple, that means you have two choruses that are slightly different in structure, to where you cannot skip between the two choruses. And I went over in another video how you can eliminate a half of a song is by switching between these two cue points if the chorus or the drop is the same. So if the chorus or the drop is the same, then you can have two purple cue points, or maybe three purple cue points, which represents three choruses or three drops that are the same, and then they're basically interchangeable. So you can switch between those, maybe using the quantize feature, so it'll always stay on beat or on grid, and then you could switch between those different moments of the song and then maybe eliminate or skip through half the song. The next cue point, which might be the fifth cue point or the sixth cue point, depending on if you have two or three drop or chorus sections, is going to be the first beat of that outro section. And if this is an instrumental section only with no vocals, this provides actually a very convenient point to mix into your next track, because as soon as you arrive at that cue point for the outro, which I always have in this kind of teal green color, you can either hit that cue point to jump right to it if it's pertinent to do so, or wait for that moment to arrive, and then you can use your red cue point on your inbound song to mix in to that track. And then other cue points that I will have might be, I may have an additional red cue point, which is an additional mixing point. It could be a beat, it could be another instrumental section, it could be a break section after that first drop or first chorus, but it gives me another option to mix in that track. And then another cue point that I like to have is going to be an orange cue point. That is going to be a loop, and this can either be an automatic loop or a passive loop. And if it's a passive loop, that means I must activate that loop myself. If it's automatic, that means when the track arrives at that moment, that loop will activate, and then I can immediately start beginning the transition for the next song. And so that loop, which is very important in open format mixing as a DJ, is going to be either 8 beats or 16 beats, which means it's either 2 bars or 4 bars. You can do less or more than that, but in most cases you probably will not, because there's also harmonic and musical elements that need to run their full course. Otherwise the song will sound like it's ending abruptly in the case of just a 1 bar loop, unless it's just pure beats. Then you can do that. If you have it too long of a loop, you may actually run to the next section, so you don't really want to go to an 8 bar loop or 32 beats. You want to keep this either 8 beats or 2 bars, or 16 beats or 4 bars. That is the ideal size. And if it's an automatic loop, it makes it so much easier for you, because if you already have this pre-programmed, which programming as a DJ is actually one of the most important functions when you're planning and preparing your sets, then you will immediately be able to mix into the next track and not have to think. You'll basically be on autopilot, and it'll make your set flow that much more smoothly. Now again, there's other assumptions that I'm making here, making that you know how to properly phrase match, you know how to properly beat match, key match as well. You want songs that are relatively in the same part of the circle of fifths, or ideally you'd be the same key, but that's not always the case, because you're going to be moving your listeners on a musical journey and you're not going to be playing the same key the entire time. But you want your songs to be relatively close in key on that circle of fifths. That way these songs will mix more harmonically. So I'm going to bring the camera around to the actual pads, which are the hot cues, the colored hot cues, and then we will do this together, and I'll show you how I actually apply these hot cue points to my actual track, and then how I actually use these during a live mix. The way to set these hot cues is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. There's 16 cue points. You can use this page button to go to the next two. And you see I have no cue points set right now, so go back to the first page of 8. But to set these cue points, you just press the button, and to eliminate the cue point, you press the shift button, hold the shift button, and then press the cue point, and that will remove that cue point. Okay, what you see in front of you is Rekordbox DJ software, and on the right deck, or deck number 2, you see my track, which is my collaboration track with the safety word Amnesia. And right here below, these are the colored hot cues. So you would see A, which is red, that's the first cue point. That is the first beat that I plan to mix in the track. So it's usually the first beat of the intro section, but it doesn't always need to be the first beat of the intro section. It can be a vocal or something like that, which may not always be on the one beat. The second cue point, and so the one, as you can see here, that's the one beat. So it's literally just the first beat of the entire song. Now the second cue point is going to be the first beat of the first verse, which is when the vocals come in. So this is when this track should be playing exclusively. So here is the second cue point, which is in blue, and this is the first beat of the first verse. Bam, see that? And these cues are these hot cues are really easy to set up, because on the pads themselves, you just press the button on the beat when your cursor is on this beat, and then that applies it. And to remove that cue, you press the shift button, you hold the shift button, and then press the hot cue, and you can limit the cue point. Or you can use your mouse, and you can actually punch in the cues in your software. You can do either or, because your hardware interacts with your software. Okay, now we're going to move on to the chorus sections. In this song, there are 2 choruses or drops, and as you can see here, both the third and fourth cue points are in purple, which means these 2 chorus or drop sections are interchangeable, which means I can flip between the 2 chorus or drop sections. And as long as I do it at the right moment in time, and I would recommend you use the quantize button for this, you can skip through half the song and the audience will likely never know. And so here are the chorus sections. So the first chorus, bam. She stands unconscious. Here's the second. Bam. It's the same. She stands unconscious. And then in this case, I actually do not have a final cue point, a outro cue point, because there is really no outro in the song. If you're going to do it, it would be right here. You could do it right here, but there's no point to have a cue there because it's silence. But many tracks will have maybe beats in the outro, and then that's a perfect mixing point. Or there'll be some sort of resolution, or the song will have a release of energy that's lower in energy than the drop, and that could also be your outro section. But in this case, where I actually plan to mix the track is going to be this loop right here. So this is an automatic loop, so when the song arrives at this moment in time, which is 1 minute and 38 seconds, this loop will activate. So I'm going to show you what this looks like. So if we're in the drop section, if we're right here, you can see by this red cursor where we're at. So we are, you know, a couple bars to the left of this loop. When I hit play, you're going to watch this loop activate. Okay, right here, watch. Bam. And so we have a 16 beat or 4-bar loop right here. And as you can hear by the vocals, they're background vocals, they're lighter. So this is actually a good moment to mix in the next track. But the next track probably cannot have vocals because it could be distracting. So if it just has beats, this would be perfect. You could just loop this and play the next song. So this is just one example of how to set up your hot cues. But I do recommend you develop your own system, learn your system, know your system inside and out, and then that way you know exactly what to do each time. You can actually create these hot cues on the fly, and it'll be very easy to mix in and out of songs because you will know your system and it'll just be formula essentially every time.